I'm just gonna say it. Biomutant took me by complete surprise. This is one of my favorite open-world games in recent memory. But it's not perfect. The game is rough around the edges, and one of its biggest flaws, at least in my opinion, is that it doesn't guide you in the right direction to help you experience the best parts of its beautiful world. Sure, you could just follow the main quest or neglect the nuances of the combat system, but then you might miss out on one of the most interesting experiences of 2021. And that's where this video comes in. And with that out of the way, I hope you'll join me as I look at 11 essential tips to help you get the most out of Biomutant. Before we begin, here's a fun fact. As of now, just over 6% of my viewers are subscribed. That blows my mind. When I publish my next video, 94% of my viewers won't get notified. I don't post videos very often, but when I do, I make sure they're worth your time. And I'd love to make more tips videos just like this one. So if that's something you're interested in, hit the subscribe button below. And with that out of the way, let's get into my top tips for Biomutant. Picking your breed and your class are important, but there are two decisions in the character creator that I want to mention. First is setting your mutation. Like picking your breed, this will affect your stats, but unlike picking your breed, adjusting your mutation can really skew one stat over the other. The two stats I'd keep an eye on are your strength and your intellect. Strength is obviously great if you plan on being a melee brawler, and you might want to boost your intellect if you plan on using psi powers or biogenetic combat abilities instead of going hand to hand. Next, make sure to pay attention to your initial resistance. As I'll talk about later, there are 5 different types of hazardous areas in Biomutant, and you can boost your resistance to 4 of them in the character creator: biohazard, radioactivity, heat, and cold. Being resistant to, say, cold will allow you to explore frozen areas for longer before you start taking damage. Now, I won't claim to have explored every corner of every section of the map, but I found more biohazardous areas in the first 5 to 10 hours. So if you want to try to explore these areas without any additional protection, I might boost my biohazardous resistance. And just FYI, I found 1 frozen area and 1 radioactive area in the early game, but I found no overheated areas. That said, that doesn't mean they weren't there. Plus, know that there are far more effective ways to boost your resistance to hazardous areas once you get further in the game, and I do cover that later. One thing you'll notice pretty quick in the world of Biomutant is that your character can't swim for crap. But not to worry. You can obtain a sort of post-apocalyptic jet ski called the Googlide that you can summon like a mount, but like many things in Biomutant, the game doesn't tell you this, at least early on. So to find it, you need to visit an area called the Subnautica Station. I won't spoil its exact location, but I will say that it's not too far north of where you start out the game. Once you're there, talk to a character named Goop, and he'll set you on a quest to defeat the Eastern World Eater. World Eaters, if you didn't know, are huge bosses in the world of Biomutant, but fear not. While you're totally free to go fight the World Eater if you want, you can also do what I did and just start the quest line. Complete the first couple of objectives and you'll get the Googlide, and then you'll be free to hop from shore to shore or island to island. Okay, this is a big one. Biomutant has a ton of content, and the vast majority is composed of side missions. And for me, side missions were by far the most rewarding and interesting parts of the game. Don't get me wrong, you will find some side missions that are more or less just fetch quests, but there are some that feel genuinely important because they actually impact the gameplay and the character progression. Maybe there'll be a side quest that lets you upgrade your crowbar so you can open stronger locked doors. Or a side quest that unlocks the radioactivity suit so you can explore radioactive areas without getting poisoned. These missions are not only engaging, but they also open up some of the most interesting areas on the map. Plus, the map is absolutely gorgeous and the areas are so varied that if you just stick to the main story and nothing else, well, I fear you're just plain old missing out. So my advice is to not just talk to every quest giver, but venture into that concrete bunker for no reason other than to see what's inside, or explore that derelict suburb that's hiding some super rare loot, which by the way you can see in these handy checklists. If you don't explore the side content, one thing's for sure, you won't get nearly as much bang for your buck. I've been playing the game for probably 30 hours and I still haven't rolled credits. In fact, based on how things are going, I expect to spend at least 50 hours with this game before I finish, and even that might be on the short side. And it's all thanks to the fact that I'm loving my time off the beaten path. If there's one moment in Biomutant that completely transformed my experience with the game, it's when I cranked up the difficulty from normal to hard. Early on, I found combat to be honestly pretty monotonous. On normal, you can just button mash your way through most early encounters, and that gets boring. Plus, it takes time because a lot of the enemies in this game are damage sponges. But when I switched to hard, I was forced to figure out the game's deeper combat mechanics, which not only shortened the encounters, but it made them way more engaging and, more importantly, more rewarding. Best of all, you can adjust the difficulty back and forth at any time, which is great because if you do play the game on hard, you will hit some pretty tough difficulty spikes, especially during some of the game's bosses and mini-bosses. So, what are some of these combat mechanics I found so rewarding? Well, that brings me to my next tip. The most rewarding mechanic in all of Biomutant's combat, at least for me, is called Wung. Wung consists of all the different button inputs you can unlock that perform different moves in battle. Most are pretty basic, so don't worry about needing to memorize that many inputs, but some of the inputs are reserved for special moves. These are the moves you'll want to learn because the game has a mechanic called Super Wung. Basically, if you pull off 3 different special moves in one combat encounter, you'll unlock Super Wung moves, which you see here on the side of the screen. And these do serious damage. That said, this is where things get a little complicated, but bear with me because it's worth it. So each Wung special move has to be unlocked by spending upgrade points, which you earn by leveling up. Not only that, but each special move is tied to a specific weapon type. So for example, if you're using a rifle that you really like, you have to unlock the special moves for rifles. It's because of this that I recommend finding a weapon you really like before spending a bunch of upgrade points on special moves. So in sum, here's what you have to do. Find weapons you like, unlock their special moves, then perform 3 of those special moves in a row in one battle, and you'll unlock Super Wung, which again are basically super attacks. After I got the hang of this, the combat went from being sort of monotonous and boring to some of the most engaging combat I can remember in any open world game. In Biomutant, 2 of the things you'll find throughout the world are psi points and bio points, which you'll spend to unlock, among other things, combat abilities in the form of mutations. As you'd expect, I found some of these combat abilities to be more useful than others. My 2 favorite combat abilities, at least so far, are Spark Ball, which again fires a ball of electricity, and Blaze, which leaves a trail of fire behind you as you charge forward. These 2 combine for an awesome combo where you can back up as you dish out 2 or 3 Spark Balls, then dash forward using Blaze as enemies chase after you. This will leave them taking both shock and fire damage for a few seconds. Another great mutation to unlock is Mothmouth, which infects enemies with a poisonous cloud, causing them to attack their allies instead of you. This was great for crowd control in battles involving 4, 5, or even 6 enemies at once. Of course, there were some abilities that I didn't like so much, such as Fungi, which plants a mushroom that can launch either you or your enemies into the air. Now, aerial combos are pretty useful, but even so, this ability just wasn't my favorite. Even when I launched myself into the air, it didn't give me enough height to provide access to that many new areas. That said, your mileage may vary. Also, the freeze ability is cool looking, and in theory, freezing enemies within an area of effect sounds awesome. But it seemed inconsistent, and when it did work, the effect didn't last long enough to warrant unlocking the ability. Biomutant lets you salvage weapons and pieces of armor for crafting materials. You can also sell armor and weapons for green, the game's currency. But when it comes to armor, don't get rid of your extra stock just yet. At least not before checking for resistances. Many pieces of armor, even if they're just basic articles of clothing, provide resistance to the game's numerous environmental hazards I mentioned earlier. This of course is handy when you run into a contaminated area. It's also worth noting that you have an Outfits tab in your gear menu, and you can use it to customize up to 5 outfits. This is great if you have a bunch of armor with, say, cold resistance, but you don't want to change into your cold resistant armor piece by piece. Just make a cold resistant outfit that you can change into instantly. Also worth noting is that you can boost your resistance to these hazards in 10% increments in the upgrade menu by spending bio points, which again you find throughout the world. But if you really want to explore these hazardous areas to your heart's content, you'll need the right outfit. And that actually brings me to my next tip. Using basic armor to boost up your resistance is great, but hidden within the world of Biomutant are special suits that, when worn in full, provide 100% resistance to their respective hazard. Find, for example, the radioactivity suit and you'll be able to explore radioactive areas. Now, tracking these down is no small feat, but doing so involved discovering some of the coolest content I've yet experienced in Biomutant. First, you'll have to locate the side quest that points you in the right direction of that particular suit. To get the biohazard suit, I had to find then activate this satellite dish, which was defended by some pretty tough bad guys. I then used the dish to locate the actual suit. This alone was a pretty cool quest, but then I decided to explore some totally random nuclear waste site. It was there that I found this boss, who provided a great challenge, and defeating him revealed this pool of biowaste. Approaching it allowed me to then mutate my character into whatever new physical appearance I wanted. This was purely cosmetic, but seriously, what an awesome reward for just exploring some random side quest. That's what I meant when I said earlier that exploring the side content in Biomutant is what makes it such a worthwhile experience, at least for me. One thing you'll notice again early in the game is that you have this robot grasshopper that follows you around. That's your Automaton, and at first he seems pretty useless. But throughout the campaign, you'll unlock abilities for your Automaton, like this Breath of the Wild-esque hang glider, or this laser sight that allows him to target enemies in combat. Okay, so how do you unlock these abilities? Well, at certain moments in the campaign, you'll see this big bear-looking guy just sitting around. He's called the Mirage, and the funny thing is, I still haven't figured out what triggers him to appear. That said, the first time I saw him, he triggered a quest that, once completed, gave me this awesome mount, but the next couple of times I saw him, he eventually provided my Automaton with these new abilities. Again, I don't know what triggers the Mirage to appear, but in any case, whenever you see him, definitely go talk to him. Biomutant is an action RPG, but make no mistake, it does lean heavily into some of its RPG elements like character customization, crafting, deep combat, and inventory management. Problem is, the game throws a lot of tutorials your way in its opening couple of hours, and there's just no way to memorize it all in such a short amount of time. Thankfully, you can access a tutorials menu, but it's not labeled in the game's pause screen like everything else, so you might not find it if you don't know where to look. It's in the journal menu, and even there it's only indicated by this light bulb. So go to the journal screen, press the left trigger, and voila, you'll have access to literally dozens of summaries of the game's many mechanics, and not to worry, most of them are super short and sweet. I found the weapon crafting system in Biomutant to be far less overwhelming when I utilized it more like a modding system for current weapons rather than a crafting system for entirely new weapons. Let me explain. Sure, you can create brand new weapons using parts you'll find in the world, but honestly, it seemed pretty unlikely that I was going to craft a brand new blade, pistol, or rifle that I liked better than the ones I'd already gotten used to. Plus, one downside to the crafting system is that it's really cumbersome to compare the stats of a new weapon to the one you've already got equipped. But what's great about the crafting system is it lets you modify and improve your favorite weapons, and it's here that you really get to compare and contrast new and old stats before you commit to spending resources to craft the new weapon. You can add a new muzzle to this pistol or a new handle to that blade. Do this enough and you can literally end up with an entirely new weapon made of entirely new components. And again, doing it like this is a much better way to compare the stats of the modified weapon with the original weapon. So there you have it. Those are some of the things I found that helped me get the most out of Biomutant. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with friends. And like I said at the outset, just over 6% of my viewers are subscribed to my channel, which is mind-blowing. I know we can do better, so if you'd like to get notified the next time I post a video just like this, definitely hit that subscribe button. Lastly, if you want to keep up with me and see what I'm playing, you can follow me on Twitter at QuestModeGames. Until next time, I want to remind everyone to never stop questing.